All right, well, I know we're a little behind, so I'll try to keep the timing going. First off, I apologize for my voice. This is the final day of Token, so this is what you get, guys. Well, my name is Adam Wozney, and I will be your moderator for today's conversation. Good to see you again. We've done some panels before. And actually, Tom, we did a panel yesterday. Good to see you. Beyond my moderating duties, I'm also head of community for the Akash Network. And very briefly, the Akash Network is a peer-to-peer marketplace for cloud compute. You need access to GPUs, CPUs for AI workloads. Head on over to Akash. We're more than willing to talk to you guys, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. So I want to kind of set the context. We're at an inflection point. Just getting everyone excited here. DePINs are transforming how we think about building, owning, and accessing critical resources like compute, storage, bandwidth, and even mobility. At the same time, artificial intelligence is scaling faster than technology before it, demanding massive amounts of infrastructure and raising questions about efficiency, access, and control. Today, our panel will explore what this synergy means for builders, investors, and communities in 2025. We'll dive into the real use cases, the risks, and the potential for DePIN and AI to shift the balance of power in technology. And with that, I'd like to introduce our panel. First up, we have Clemens. Where's Clemens? I'm just seeing. There you are, Clemens. I got you. CFO of Impossible Network. Now, when I was looking into your background, very early in your career, I saw that you worked as a fruit picker. Is that correct? So my question for you is, do you have any tips or tricks for picking the best produce at the grocery store? I do a lot of cooking now. We have a 1-year-old baby, so I always want to get some good fruit and veggies for him. So any tips or tricks for picking some good produce?
I mean, it was not so much about picking fruits in the supermarket. It was actually out there in the field in Australia. And the best tip there is don't pick sweet potatoes, because brown snakes really like sweet potatoes. And if you put your hand below sweet potatoes, there might be a brown snake, which is the second most toxic snake in Australia.
This is good Australian advice.
Yeah, no, I had no idea.
Confirm.
I feel bad for all the sweet potato pickers out there. We eat a lot of sweet potatoes. Babies love sweet potatoes, in case you guys didn't know. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Next up, we have Harry, founder of 375 AI. And this is actually kind of goes alongside Clemens. I saw that you're an enthusiastic chef. Is that accurate? What's the kind of your go-to meal when you're cooking for family and friends?
I love cooking French food and Italian food, but French food mostly, like hearty stews. I live in Canada and it's cold, so like beef bourguignon, coq au vin, that kind of stuff. It's my go-to.
Very rich, filling. That's good stuff.
Warms the soul.
Well, if you have a recipe, come grab him after the panel. I'm sure he'll hook you guys up. Next up, we have Mark, co-founder of Aethir, and we actually did a panel at ETH Denver earlier this year. Good to see you again. And one of the questions I asked you was about your certificate in oil spill response, but I want to switch it up. I found some other information on you. You're not just an oil response guy. I don't know if that's a thing, but I also saw that you like to play video games. And some of those video games include Counter-Strike, StarCraft, World of Warcraft, and Warcraft 3. Are you still pretty active in the video game world, or are you kind of like focused on other things now?
So Aethir does have kind of some gaming roots, right? The original cloud component of our network was for cloud gaming. My co-founder was the CEO of Riot Games, and we bonded as friends over gaming. I haven't bought a gaming PC in like 10 years because my productivity would just go straight downhill. I have to just fully abstain, otherwise I'll spiral. But I did buy a PS5 recently, maybe 6-7 months ago. So I finally got back into gaming. I played Cyberpunk 2077, which is a fantastic game. And I will say that I have often found myself with the ChatGPT voice assistant kind of open, giving me like quest advice on like the mission. I'm on this mission, I'm like blocked, because like decisions you make indicate like where you end up, and I want to make the optimal decision. So AI is a great gaming partner, to be fair.
Yeah, 100%. Do you guys, any other gamers, or is it just Mark over there?
25 years ago, yeah.
I know, I got rid of my Xbox because exactly the same. I'm like, this is eating up too much of my time. Thank you for that, Mark. And next up, we have Markus, co-founder of XYO. I learned you actually live in San Diego, yes?
That's right, yeah.
I live in Vista, so we definitely need to exchange. I just moved there recently, so I think it'd be good to make some friends, some crypto friends. That's awesome. You also mined your first Bitcoin in 2013, so we got an OG over here. But speaking of games, I mentioned these before. It seems like you're an avid player of Settlers of Catan. So my big question for you is, because I'm a Settlers guy myself, are you kind of a all-in on building the longest road kind of guy, or are you more of a cities and development cards player?
Neither. My strategy is secret until you play with me, but I switch it up. It really depends. But I love board games. I play Azul right now a lot, and Wingspan, and Splendor, and those kinds of stuff. So we should definitely meet in San Diego.
Yeah, we got to get a little San Diego crypto board game community going.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, I like this. Well, that's not what we're here to talk about, board games and picking fruit. We're here to talk about DePIN and AI, so I kind of want to get right into the question. So just to kind of level set, to kind of kick things off, and we can start maybe down here with Harry. Why do DePIN and AI feel like natural complements, and what does this convergence really mean?
Oh, that's a big question. So, I mean, AI is something that even someone who's working in the space and is so close to it is almost unfathomably huge, that the only way it can scale is through an element of decentralization. And Web3 and crypto enable the acceleration of that, because there will never be enough. There will always be a requirement for more, and that requirement growth will enable more and more innovation. So, the two complement each other so well, because it enables more and more people to participate in the creation of what is going to be and is already becoming a life-changing, civilization-changing evolution in technology. So the more people that can be contributing in whatever manner, whether that's in electricity or compute or GPU or storage or sensing or capture of data, the better it is for the product output that then becomes what people build and what people create from this. So that's really where I see this, and we're at day one. We're not even born yet. We're in gestation, and we'll never reach maturity, frankly, but we're really, really extremely early.
Yeah, I think what Harry said is like to be able to reach ultimate scale, right? We need decentralization and everybody to pitch in, right? Their resources, and we see trillions of dollars being spent on compute infrastructure, right? And I think we're going to see the same thing on the data side. And to be able to do that, we need decentralized networks to be able to do that. And also, we are all greedy, right? We want to be part of this. And by pitching in, we have economic advantages and by participating. And so it's a win-win situation in the end for the AI, DePIN and us.
Yeah, I think not much more to add, other than just that the ecosystem, the AI ecosystem, is so driven right now, or maybe in other words, so limited by scarcity of resource, right? Whether it's compute or data, and that's obviously driving up the value of those resources. If there's any way that you can tap into underutilized or inefficiently managed supply, plug it into a DePIN, right? That's a way that you can benefit, right? And it's a way that the broader AI ecosystem can benefit from this kind of net new contribution that may not exist otherwise. When you think about it through the lens of data, similarly, there's a huge amount of really valuable data that's quite difficult to actually get access to, right? Obviously, if you look at the capability of models, they're very, very good at creative writing, they're very, very good at coding, right? And that's largely because they have huge access to that type of data to train on and improve on. They're not that good at things like mathematics or maybe weather modeling, right? Because they don't have access to as much data in that space. And that's where really interesting kind of solutions from the DePIN side can come in and reward people for providing a solution to that element of scarcity.
And so I really believe that very soon we'll live in this sci-fi world where like lots of things will fly around, kind of a machine economy, everything autonomous, robots running around here, and I think it's just the perfect match for me that everything, all of that will be orchestrated by DePIN networks, right, to make it really scalable, autonomous, and there's where I see the biggest use case for the.
So kind of piggybacking up what we're discussing here, we really want to focus in on like what makes 2025 different. Like when we met earlier this year, DePIN was in a different place than it is today or right now, you know, and that's only a matter of a few months, right? So kind of thinking about zooming in on this timing, what do you think makes 2025 such a pivotal year for AI and DePIN to come together? What's changed in this landscape to unlock this moment?
So I have been involved in DePIN before it was even a word. And I mean, what's now finally coming of age is, and not necessarily specifically in the AI sector of DePIN, but certainly DePIN as a whole, is that it's maturing to a point of utility that is valuable. And that value is being demonstrated by businesses like Aethir, who now have like great revenue streams. Helium are growing their revenue streams to a point of real substance. And you know, I've come from a world where I ran quote unquote normal businesses, and you know, revenue was really important. And
Shocker.
Exactly. And now we're getting to a point where the revenue is becoming meaningful enough that it's going to tip the balance, and then this turbo scale button can really be pressed. And I think it's that inflection point that we're beginning to just get towards.
Yeah, I think the World Economic Forum forecasting that DePIN is going to be a $3.5 trillion market by 2028. That's in 2.5 years, right? That's a mind-boggling number, right? And to be able to get there, right? It means it's part of the AI age, the AI growth, right? And it's quite an evidence that it all comes together. And Aethir and others like us, we are generating revenue, build real businesses, and become part of this growth curve.
Yeah, I think the narrative, as has been shared, the narrative's shifted a little bit in crypto. We've been burned a lot by highly speculative moves in the space. The value of revenue and fundamentals within a business, I think, are coming a little bit more to the fore. And DePIN is one of the sectors that really shines through that lens, right? You do need fundamentals to run a DePIN project, particularly if you have a hardware element, right? You can't avoid the fact that you need to go and manufacture something, you need to pay for it, you need to distribute it, right? So DePIN, I think, is a great example. Also, where we're seeing a big inflection point in public markets looking in and joining the crypto space. Right now, it's obviously through the lens of stable coins and stablecoin adjacent layer ones and RWAs and things like that. But that's bringing new interest to the space that does care about fundamentals, right? They're not degens that have been in here for the last kind of like 5 years that are just out here to trade meme coins. They're looking into the space, and they're already coming through as skeptics, right? And they're sifting through the noise, and they're trying to find signal. And I think DePIN is a very easy pill for these companies to swallow, these people to swallow. It's something that I think is super easy to understand, and I think that's going to drive a lot of interest in the space.
You know, ultimately, it's all about adoption, right? And I think we are already seeing in the AI space the exponential adoption curve. I think we're still lagging a little bit behind in DePIN, but I do believe that it's also coming. And ultimately, I think often regulation is also a big driver of adoption, right? And I think yesterday or 2 days ago, there was a big announcement about the 0.0 kind of classification, and I think in the US, I think that would be another super big push for all the DePIN projects.
Excuse me, voice is shot, guys. Apologies. Kind of piggybacking off that, I want to talk about kind of some of the opportunities and really focusing on the infrastructure of AI and DePIN. As we all know, AI is pretty hungry for infrastructure, right? Can DePIN realistically meet the scale, excuse me, and reliability AI demands today? Or are we still talking about, you know, future potential of DePIN and AI?
I mean, the needs fall into several buckets. Obviously, the obvious one that most people are aware of, and NVIDIA and Meta and OpenAI talk about it all the time, is GPU, GPU, GPU. There are other needs beyond just GPU, and information and intelligence is really a missing factor in many cases. And the reason why AI models need to use synthetic data, which is extrapolated and frankly made up, but from good basis, but the reason why they use it is because they're hungry for more. So the more you can feed these things, assuming there is enough GPU to then process and understand and interrogate and inference, then the greater and more powerful these things can become. And certainly what we're doing at 375 AI is enabling the digitization of what would otherwise be the physical or analog world, which is something that at scale has never really been done. Online, everything that people look at, click, search, buy. In the offline world, there is no equivalent. Yet 75% of all commerce happens offline. But there's none of the comparable information. So feeding that information in as a totally new, fresh data point at high fidelity and scale changes the game for AI models to operate, and then therefore autonomy, robotics, and other physical AI elements to thrive. And so it's storage, GPU, compute, but data is the piece that at least I'm focusing on, and I think is a real missing ingredient.
So yeah, I want to
as a chef.
Nice. I like the circle back there. I want to kind of double click on this and then keep it with you and then keep it going down. But you mentioned it's not just about GPUs, right? I think that's what everybody's thinking. Oh, it's all about GPUs, but AI requires so much, and you're focused in on data. Do you feel like that is the key point that people should be looking at? Like, what are the organizations that are focused on AI data, and maybe even how DePIN can kind of help solve some of those issues, perhaps?
I don't think it would be. I mean, if I was self-serving, then I'd say yes. But it really is kind of like a 5-angled seesaw where you have to keep everything balanced. If you have too much data, you can't do much with it, and if you don't have enough storage, you can't do much with it. So it really is growing the balance in equilibrium. I mean, of course, certain things are going to get ahead of each other at times, but then other areas will need to catch up. But I certainly think that there's far more GPU than there is information, and hence why today so much information is being synthesized.
Right. Do you have kind of the same outlook, Markus?
Yeah, what Harry says is so important. I think we need to look at the data, and data feeds AI, right? In the end, and then you need to compute to crunch the data, but the data is a starting point. The problem with data, there's different kinds of data, right? There's data in Singapore, which is very represented, right? Singapore is a very connected city with a lot of sensors and a lot of people, so you get a lot of data. But if you look in like a village in Africa, for example, right? That data from that place might be underrepresented. And with DePIN, you can solve that actually and collect data from underrepresented communities. For example, when we translated our website with ChatGPT into like 30 languages, one of them was Amharic, and Amharic is a language of Ethiopia, spoken by, I think, 110 million people. It made a lot of mistakes. And Amharic speaker said to us, and it was mind-boggling, right? How can this language, which has more than 100 million speakers, have issues? And it's, okay, big companies like OpenAI are not so interested in markets which are not generating lots of dollars. And then if you look on a micro level, right, if you look on a village or town or city level, a lot of places get forgotten, and probably most of the world is underrepresented. And so we, for example, we collect data at XYO. We have like more than 600,000 nodes in Africa, in every single African countries. And what you can do with that, for example, you can build localized weather services, for example, right? If you take a picture of the ground and then of the clouds, and everybody sends these pictures, right? Then you can feed that into a farming AI, let's say, and build a farming model. And I think that's where DePIN and AI really come together and can shine.
You guys are too polite.
So we focus on storage, and we intentionally started with storage for various reasons. Most importantly, because we believe in kind of data gravity and data locality, right? So everything starts with where do you store the data, and there is because I think your question was like, what should companies worry about, right? And I really believe that in terms of you can either obviously store your data at one of the more well-known publicly kind of hyperscalers or in a more localized sense, right? And we think that more and more customers, or ultimately enterprises, will want to store their data in more localized environments to really create their own proprietary AI models on top of that no one else can use that. So, I think that's a big topic in our view for companies.
Yeah, I mean, AI is getting obviously increasingly more capable, right? If you ask ChatGPT 5 a question, it's going to give you a better answer than ChatGPT 4, and ChatGPT 4 will give you a better answer than ChatGPT 3. We have this kind of linear progression of AI capability over time. And I think the natural progression here that we all expect is that eventually, as it kind of gets more and more intelligent, we will want more from it in the sense that we don't just want answers, we'll probably want action too, right? We'll probably want this agent to the LLM to not just tell us what flight to book or what stock is relevant for my investment thesis. We'll actually want it to go and execute on that, right? And this is where you start to get out of this generalized intelligence sphere and into requiring quite specialized information, right? You need to know specifically how to engage with, I don't know, the brokerage account, or you need to specifically know how to interact with that website, right? And all of this specific knowledge that becomes much more important once we get into this kind of agent space, the action space, requires data that, we may need different incentive mechanisms to pull into the ecosystem, right? And similarly, when you get to that next stage of action, which is robotics, right? You're moving out of action in the digital world, you're moving into action in the real world. Again, that's a huge data bottleneck, right? We don't have a whole bunch of cataloged videos and images explaining to AI what the real world is, right? We don't just have in a bank billions of pictures of fruit, right, that says this is a vegetables, this is a sweet potato, don't pick it up, right?
Watch out for that brown snake.
Exactly. It's not there, right? It's just pictures, right? And AI doesn't know what pictures are. It needs context, right? So I think there's data through the lens of just generalized intelligence, and AI is getting smarter and smarter, right? But once you get into that the execution areas, really specific data matters. And that's, I think, a great problem that DePIN can address.
So we're kind of talking about some of the things that AI requires and how DePIN can kind of solve some of these things. We talked about data, talked about infrastructure, storage, and I think the 500-pound elephant in the room is energy, right? That's what at least a lot of focus lately has been. So AI is projected to consume up to 8% of global electricity demand by 2030 if this trend continues. Pretty crazy. That's more than the entire power consumption of Japan today. So just let that sink in. That's just AI. Can DePIN realistically offer a more sustainable and distributed way to meet this demand, or are we just shifting the energy burden elsewhere?
I mean, I think there's going to have to be movement in every area of energy to keep up with the pace of the requirement. There's a deficit already, and the deficit is probably going to grow before it shrinks. I certainly think that DePIN and energy DePINs can have a contributing role. If everyone's home becomes a mini power station in some way, shape, or form, which of course has been happening for decades with people selling back to the grid from solar and things like that. But if that could happen at scale and with everyone, it could start to make a dent in it. And I think it's not going to be the whole solution, but I think it's going to be one of the component parts that is going to be necessary, and that could well become, I think energy is already becoming one of the bottlenecks that I spoke about, whether it's storage, data, compute, GPU, energy is one of them.
I think it's easy, yeah. If there is sufficient economic incentive, then it will be solved. And so, right in the beginning, maybe we put a single solar cell on our roof, right, to create some energy. But then, if you have bigger incentives, the city comes together, right, and builds a solar farm in its backyard, right? And then maybe then more and more people come together, right, and try to solve these things. So the economic incentives DePIN can provide and the AI boom provides, come together nicely, I think, and will be able to solve this.
Yeah, I don't think DePIN is going to solve the power problem. I think it'll help a little, right? I think I heard about a DePIN the other day, which was that allowed electric vehicles to charge their vehicles during periods of cheaper electricity, and then they could actually drive their car to an area and then like literally dump their battery into a bank and get a profit, right? So like using the battery in the car as a mechanism for transferring power between areas where there was some arbitrage. I think this is definitely driving a lot of investment in renewables, which I think in general is a good thing. I think there's pretty much a consensus that this sort of power drive or power requirement is not going to be solved by fossil fuels. All of these new power facilities that are being built adjacent to data centers or just prior to data center deployment, it's all modular nuclear, it's hydrogen facilities, it's investments in fusion and cold fusion technologies that are very nascent, right? And it's also just massive solar facilities. These are solutions that I think big centralized power players will need to solve, particularly as the massive draw for these data centers from a power perspective is just so extreme. However, there is an adjacent area that I think DePIN can have an impact, and that's something, for example, that I know Akash released recently, which is decentralized training or decentralized inferencing. This idea that you can conduct a training run on a heterogeneous cloud, right? So instead of having to run a training operation with AI on, say, a co-located cluster of 100 GPUs in a data center, you can instead distribute that over 10,000 MacBooks and 4090s and iPhones, right? And effectively fractionalizing the compute requirements for that training run over a diverse collection of compute providers. What this does is it allows you to effectively pull computing power from devices that are already priced into the grid, right? You don't need new power for a phone that someone already has or a gaming PC that someone already has. So that, I think, is a unique and interesting source of computing power or energy through the lens of AI, and probably over the next maybe 5 years, going to be one of the areas, I hope, that drives the compute behind more personalized AI, right? It's unlikely if you've got an AI that's running on a local device, that's learning and adapting as obviously models get smaller and more capable of running on kind of consumer devices. Those models need to be trained and fine-tuned. My estimate is it's more likely that they'll be trained and fine-tuned on some sort of like heterogeneous cloud than it is that they'll kind of like back channel into a data center or something like that.
Do you think it's just kind of a double click, and you can kind of jump in, feel free. Do you think it's realistic to imagine a world where the energy that AI needs will be homegrown, or do you think we're always going to have a need for a centralized player, like a public utility?
I think as we transition more towards models that are capable of operating performantly on consumer devices, then we'll start to be able to maybe move a lot of that kind of training and fine-tuning operation away from data centers. But as long as we're kind of putting that intelligence request on frontier models, it's more likely that that'll come directly from data centers.
And I mean, if I might add, I think the movement of stuff to the edge is going to be a fundamental shift in how infrastructure evolves. It's gone from mainframes to cloud, and now into fog/edge. And cloud isn't really cloud. It's basically just more mainframes in a few more places. But you have US East, West, Central. When AWS goes down, it goes down. The more you can move to the edge, and again, like you say, there's so many devices that are going to be on and redundant 99% or 90% of the time, to utilize that at scale, that is a fundamental change of how the internet operates, and it's a total rewiring of the infrastructure itself.
I'm actually very optimistic about the whole energy problem. I used to work in the energy and commodity space, and I've seen so much crazy stuff and so much innovation happening there that I think in the mid to long term energy will not be a problem anymore. But I think until then, decentralization can help to accelerate it, to solve it. Because for example, in Germany, in the Frankfurt area, you already have kind of power congestions and because of all the data centers there, so that even sometimes some people in their villages there have actual power issues. So that's why the government there does not give out new permissions for data centers, and I think something like that can be solved by decentralizing the overall network, and then release or reduce the stress on the overall grid.
So I think we have time, excuse me, I think we have time for maybe one more question before we have to wrap it up, but thank you guys for being here today. So let's fast forward. I was going to say to the end of 2025, but that's coming up pretty soon here. So let's fast forward maybe 5, 10 years out. What does success look like for AI and DePIN? What does it look like? What are some milestones we should be looking for those success metrics maybe 5 or 10 years from now?
I think it's mass adoption. I mean, I look forward to the day where DePIN as a word doesn't exist. It's just called life, and people, whether they know it or not, are contributing in some way, and there's a value exchange where they're receiving something, whether that's monetary or services, and giving something back, and that being beyond the walls of these rooms and the people attending this conference and other conferences around Singapore right now, but it being just a mainstream norm. And I really believe that this movement, as I say, is in its total infancy, and if it gets to a point of mass scale adoption, it will just be synonymous with life, and thankfully the term DePIN will disappear into the abyss.
You coined it right now. No more DePIN. It's going to be called Life Day from now on. I like that. Markus, please.
We were the first live companies. Yeah. Actually, I was the first DePIN, so I'd like that. I think in 5 to 10 years, it's not only the age of AI and DePIN, but also quantum computing is gonna have made it on the scene, and that's gonna enable massive growth on the AI side, and I think we can't even imagine how life will look like when all of that comes to pass in terms of life and health and everything. And so I think DePIN will be permeating everything, and it will be just a different future.
Yeah, similar sort of thing. I hope we have more ownership of the data that we generate as individuals. I hope that the understanding of the value of the data that we provide becomes more mainstream, and I hope that we have a little bit more control over what we contribute.
And so it comes back to kind of my opening statement. I really believe in this, kind of agentic autonomous world, and success to me would look like if that is all underpinned by various DePIN protocols orchestrating that.
Well, I think that's all the time we have for today, but I want to thank our panelists, Harry, Clemens, Mark, and Markus. Big round of applause for these guys. Thank you guys for joining us, and have a good rest of Token 2049.
Excellent.